This here is our perennial herb dominated border. It's planted on a swale and we've got vegetable growing areas in between. This here is hybrid popular that we've planted, which we're going to kind of turn this into a bit of a syntropic system, and there's comfrey as well. But the primary focus of this is to have as many different herbs as possible. Perennial herbs are brilliant for so many reasons. Firstly, in terms of flavour, you only need a few perennial herbs and they pack a punch when it comes to kitchen. The other thing about perennial herbs is that when they flower, their flowers can last for weeks, if not months. So I'll give a couple of examples. One is here. We've got marjoram. This is something that can flower for weeks at a time. Here, this beautiful plant, this is white Korean mint. So there's a bumblebee on here as well, but this will flower from about mid-summer until about mid-autumn. If you're wanting to increase wildlife and insect life into your garden, starting with perennial herbs is an ideal way of doing that, not only because they have that longevity of which they flower, plus you have ones that are much earlier in spring like rosemary flowers and chives, but the other thing is that they are either a wild plant like this wild marjoram, or they're a domesticated version of a wild plant, but they're very closely domesticated or very closely related. And wild plants have this relationship, this natural design relationship with pollinators. And so what it means is that with all of these little flowers, like with the marjoram and also with the mint, and then we've got bronze fennel behind here, all of these little flowers are perfect for so many of our native insects and bumblebees, particularly short-tongued bumblebees or other kind of pollinators, like we've got the native Welsh black honeybee here. They only have like quite short tongues, and there are some flowers which are quite long and it's harder for them to access the nectar which they use as their food source, and also the pollen which they eat as sustenance, but they mainly bring that back as a great protein source and stuff for bringing up their young. So perennial herbs are amazing, and the one thing that we want to get done on this site is just grow as many perennial herbs as possible in order to use it as a way of creating these permanent habitats to benefit our local wildlife population. And so the rough idea here is we've got the perennial trees that we're going to treat as a syntropic system, along with the comfrey that we can chop and drop, and we can use that either to add a bit more fertility around here, particularly if we're planting in between the gaps, but also to use as a mulch for the plants that we're growing in between these three swales. And these swales, by the way, they were hand dug. So we just got a team of us together and some spades, and we dug and we shaped them. And then from the nursery, we had loads of kind of spare plants that we could help ourselves to. And we had this plantathon, and we've planted it up. However, you'll see that there are some annuals here. So this here is Cosmos Gloria. Cosmos is great for pollinators, but it is an annual. Now, one of the things that we're going to be adjusting a little bit as time goes on is encouraging self-seeding. So things like the fennel will self-seed readily, but this Cosmos, we're not deadheading it. If it self-seeds and it sends up more Cosmos and it fills in between the gaps of the herbs as they continue to develop and spread over the coming years, then that is an exciting prospect. And another thing that will gently self-seed is something like this agastache. So having things to self-seed and kind of just nasturtiums, another example of an annual that we're happy for it to self-seed. And so this is just showing you what can happen in about 2 to 3 months right after we planted this, the kind of colour that you get. And we want to create this permanent border. That's the thing with perennial herbs, is that there's a permanence to them. And so this will always be a place that is pollinator and beneficial insect heavy or focused. So they'll kind of know that this is always going to be a place that they can come here and forage. And even if you had a little space hopefully this kind of just shows you, or it'll inspire you, all of the different types of colours and herbs that you can grow along here, and some we won't even get to enjoy until next year. There's this one here, which is caraway. It's a biennial, so it'll be next year that will then flower and set seed, and that also will spread its seeds everywhere and grow, and it'll be absolutely amazing. Another thing that's quite amazing around here, Vietnamese coriander, and here is salad bonnet, and we have soapwort as well. So there is so much growing on. It's so exciting, and there's not much thought that goes into the planting. It's more of a case of just spread everything out fairly equally and then edit and adjust as we see fit. Now, we had a couple of spare cardoon plants, so we decided to just plant these at the end and see what happens. Now, these might need a little bit extra fertility and pampering, but it's their first year. This was grown from seed either April or May, so you can kind of just experience the kind of growth that can happen with that. But I do love the structure that cardoons add. Just looking at this, cardoons get massive, so this is just like a little hint as to, or like a little tease into what these can turn out to be. But I love the way that the cardoon is growing, with the cosmos growing in and around and in between it, and starting to create those layers. Because if you're wanting to attract pollinators into your garden to help with pollinating the food that you grow, but also bringing in those beneficial insects, especially like hoverflies and stuff, their larvae are fantastic at predating aphids. This year was a massive aphid year because it was so dry and so warm early in spring. Everything just went whoop, and with that, it was all of that sap and that tender growth that has this weakness to aphids. So that's why we had a lot of aphid problems. So by creating different layers of plants, and with perennial herbs and other like perennial vegetables, these will end up flowering like the cardoons, and these are fantastic. What you're doing is you're creating kind of different micro ecosystems, like microenvironments or niches that attract that diversity of insects, because there are thousands of insects that you can attract to your garden. And so having different diversity, maybe something that is like lower down and more sheltered, something that then adds like a little bit of height, different types of flowers as well, umbelliferous flowers versus more kind of open flowers, these all have different kind of niches of insects that are attracted to them. So creating that diversity is literally just saying, hey guys, come to the garden, there is something for everyone. You're creating a feast for those insects, which I just think is so fun.